Welcome to the Casual VTuber Business Intelligence panel. Past the clock, Sunday morning. At least one of you is hungover, so small, quiet round of applause for those of you who have a huge headache yet or two. I almost got to that point, but yesterday, but I just went to sleep and that was good. On the internet and most hobby stuff, my name is Tim Foyle. You've probably seen that name around for at least a decade if you played visual novels at one point in your life and bought one, I think. So yeah, should be fun. And so a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about today are like because it's business intelligence, right? And business intelligence is the art and like surrounding context around making money. A lot of it's going to be about money. A lot of it's going to be about data surrounding how money is made and stuff like that. But in context of all of that, and because it's 10 a.m. on Sunday, wrong order. But the intended audience of this slide are people who are illiterate. When you come to a convention, you don't really want to turn your brain on to this level. So I didn't really want to turn my brain on to that level while making these slides, or while presenting these slides. So hopefully a lot of the stuff here is readily accessible for most people who aren't like really into data and stuff like that, and you can kind of take away a few interesting things from this. A little bit about me and just like why I'm not a total like nobody that is just talking shit in front of a panel. I got hooked into VTubers after doing visual novel stuff, right? In early 2020, my first exposure to VTubers was the Seiyu, the voice actor Tomokazu Sugita, guesting as his like mascot Agiris on Deno Shoujo Shiro's channel back in 2018. And so I like actually went in Discord and like searched the first time I said the word VTuber, and I was like, damn, 2018? I guess so. And then I like actually got hooked in like early 2020, or like a couple months before like Coco and all of them started broadcasting, I guess. Another stuff, I guess I'm bragging at this point. I made the Gente Discord bot. Probably at least one of you have used it and was like, why is it asking for these permissions? And I hopefully explained it well. There's a new version of that after Veribot and all this other stuff that's coming out, and a bunch of non-hololive, I guess I would describe them. Discord servers are trying it out, so hopefully maybe we'll get to 11,000 daily active users, which is probably better than lots of startups in the Silicon Valley. We'll see what happens. And then as a result of doing all of that, I kind of got way into the YouTube API, right? I was like, how do I figure out over the board how somebody is a member of a channel? And then I started like kind of digesting all the data structures and stuff like that. Like, what is a comment? What is a super chat? And it turns out that super chats and membership messages, all of those things that you see flying on the right side of the screen, they're all actually the same data structure. It's just all a comma, turns out. And so from that, you can basically kind of get that if you are a person watching a stream and you have this flow of information on the right side, turns out you can just watch a stream using code and just get all that information. And so one of the things that is kind of obviating about business intelligence is that there's a bunch of stuff that you can get via private means. So this is like leakage, things like that, a little bit like more seedy stuff. But it turns out that there's almost too much information that you can get via public means by just watching a stream. And like instead of you and your eyes looking at the comments, it's you and your code looking at the reverse engineered protobuf data structure that Google ships inside of JSON, which is actually why it's so slow. It's just pulling one endpoint over and over again and maxing your CPU every like 10 seconds. So yeah, so while I'm doing this slide and while I'm doing all this stuff, if you happen to be a VTuber or somebody that's involved in content creation in general, I literally, if you were here at basically the same time, watching and listening to Reichi's panel yesterday, I was like, can I just steal this slide? And she's like, sure. And I'm like, okay, cool. And so here's the stolen slide, basically about how like, essentially, if you are doing content creation and stuff like that, and you see the numbers that are going to be flying around here, which are in like the millions and billions of stuff, just because you don't have that million or billion doesn't mean you're useless, right? It doesn't mean that the thing that you're doing, the content you're creating, the self-expression of yourself you're putting out on the internet, you don't have to be valuing that kind of thing along the lines of money or metrics or anything like that. But if you like data, it's very fun to digest and kind of backseat, right? All of these people that are doing thousands, million scale, like number crunching, like, oh, we need another 100,000 to put on our talent to make our investments worth it because we're going to IPO. So that's the kind of level of like analysis and like detachment, I guess, that you should probably get from this if you want to. So yeah, as a background to all of that stuff, like back in 2020, I was like, wow, how does Playboard.co get their data? And then I figured out how, and then I got the data. And then, so there's this tweet back in 2020. It's a Google Data Studio report that you can actually visit. So just go look at my Twitter. And then just posted by tinfoil playboard. And I'm pretty sure that's the query that I put inside the Twitter search to retrieve that. And so yeah, you could go look at it. It's essentially a nice up and to the right chart, which feels really good, except this one is down and to the right. I don't know why that thumbnail is like that. It just kind of saved it a while back. But it has a bunch of information like about the first time that a lot of people have done this. When you look at different companies' slides, both external and like B2B sales slides, I'm like, did I accidentally make the first time that people have made charts about VTubers? And then, right, there's like this data scientist somewhere inside this company cross-referencing this thing, and I'm like, maybe I can take credit for that. I don't know. But yeah, so that's kind of like the first time that I realized like, oh, you can just straight up download all of this. And had a lot of fun going through that, trying to classify what a simp is, right? And it turns out anybody that super chats is already a simp because it's like, something around like 10% of all people that are watching send super chats, and it's like, oh, okay, you're already above whatever average or norm. It's just like the fact that you've bothered to click that button at all is like, okay, you're in. What? Oh, okay. So that figure isn't in this slides, but it turns out that one of the I didn't put it in these slides, but it turns out that the monetization rate of gacha games and the monetization rate of free to play versus paid is almost exactly the same. Like in terms of a statistical like standard deviation, it's like not the same, right? But in terms of like, these are the people that aren't paying explicitly. These are the people that are paying explicitly. The monetization ratio is like the same. And it's just like, oh shit, what do I do with this info? I don't work on VTubers. And so I talked to a couple people and hopefully maybe they did something about it. But yeah, so that's the kind of fun things you can do if you like, because like side games and everything would publish metrics. And then you'd be like, okay, well, is VTubers gacha? And then just test fit it and see what happens. So yeah, so that report's pretty fun. It has a lot of statistics, and it's an interactive little chart that you can use. So for those of you who might be in like data engineering, because this is Silicon Valley, and I did clickbait everybody by putting big data as the thumbnail for the thing. I'll tell you where all this stuff is coming from, and if you can access it and stuff like that. So the first one is something that I made called Tuber Report. I made it for fun after I found out how to not only download the chats and live streams, but do it live, which turns out to be kind of hard, actually, and uses a lot of bandwidth, as you can imagine, especially if you want to do it across all VTubers at the same time. And so one of the things that happened for a little while, and then I think Google was like, yeah, fucking fine, was that I would constantly be doing the little interstitials like, we think you're a spam bot. And I'm like, I bet it's because I'm downloading, like on a different machine on my home network, like 30 different VTubers chats all at the same time, and some Google anti-spam CDN thing in Los Angeles is saying, is that a bot? So, I mean, it is, so it was right, but I kept pressing the button, and so I think I just trained machine learning somewhere inside of Google to be like, no, that's a human being. So
they're reacting to every request.
Yeah, that's like, oh yeah, well, it turns out they keep passing spam, so maybe they just have a lot of tabs open, you know? So that's, I don't know how that worked, but basically, this is the most technical part of the slide, or part of the slides. There's about 100 gigabytes of chat data in BigQuery and ScyllaDB, if you know what ScyllaDB is. That's because the insert, like if you're not technical, you can just tune out for like the next 30 seconds. 100 gigabytes of chat data in BigQuery and ScyllaDB. It had to be ScyllaDB on premise and with SSDs because of the write speed of every record, right? That would be chatting. So like if somebody said kusa, and if like 50 different people said kusa at the same time, I had to handle the write volume of that. And when you do it in SQL, it's just like, well, I have to update the index now. And I'm like, no, we'll just shove it into something that looks like MongoDB, but it actually saves things. That was the kind of approach I did with that. And so I have like 3 1 terabyte hard drives scattered across like different eBay computers, saving chats as we speak, actually. And so the raw data set here, because right when you download a or when you see a super chat, you have the profile picture, you have the name. It turns out Google also ships the author ID, your channel ID of the person. So like when you click report, right, how do you report a channel based on its profile picture? You don't. You report it based on its channel ID. And so really it's available under both academic and commercial use. There's like a university or two. There's somebody that use it for their, or is using it for their thesis, which I think is pretty scary, but really it's just for safety and liability because I'm like, I don't really want to bother to pseudo-anonymize the data set. So it's just like, okay, well, if somebody wants to pay me like the smidgen of money they get for research funding so that this doesn't cost me $0. So this costs me $0 to run versus like negative something, then that's nice. So unfortunately, that's inaccessible. But the other thing that is accessible here is going to be the holodata data set. And so Uechi from yesterday, right? As mentioned by the holodex folks yesterday, they maintain a VTuber 1 billion data set. So there's going to be a bunch of figures about how many billions and millions of things that people have on record. And it's essentially anonymized chats, super chats, and moderation events, which I also have, but this one's nice and pseudo-anonymized with like some salted hash thing. And it's intended for machine learning use. That's like the original intention, and also just for fun. And it's licensed under the Open Data Commons PDDL. So if you want to just do like you don't care about one specific person, you just want to do stuff in the aggregate, and you want to use it for your thesis, go ahead, right ahead. You can do things like, oh, it's the same author channel ID hash across different channels, chats, and things like that. So that's the level of stuff that you can be doing there. And then Uechi is Nihongo Jozu. Pretty sure might be Japanese. So
I'm so sorry.
yeah, pretty sure might be Japanese. There's just a channel in Japanese where I'm like, cool, inside of the holodata Discord server that I don't want to bother to read all the kanji in. So yeah. They gave me a bunch of stuff. Their data set is 52 gigabytes of Parquet files, if you know what those are. And here's a bunch of assets, a bunch of pretty stuff, being like, oh, you're going to mention my thing? Here's a bunch of image assets. And I'm like, yep, that's it. And so the Sensei toxic chat data set is an experiment that the holodata, like, I think it's called there you go. The Data Shrimp Collective is what they call it. Based on like, oh, what if we could be better than Google at determining what a bad chat message is, right? And so it's just it's for fun. There's no money involved in it. So people are just having fun practicing with ML and stuff like that. So maybe they'll be better. Maybe they won't. Who knows, man? I guess it's like either they're gonna win or Susan's gonna finally bother to fix something. YouTube. So, right.
One can hope.
One can hope. Yeah. Yeah, so a few other things about the data set, just to underscore all this stuff. All data can or could have been, so like when a YouTube video goes down, all the chats go down too, so that's could have been. Retrieved publicly. Figures include data, removed videos, channels, etc. So like when Melissa Kinika will retire in like May 31, I think, right? All of her stuff will just disappear off the face of the internet. So that's the kind of thing that these different data sets that I'm going to be presenting about will have on it, just as a matter of fact. So there you go. And once again, artistic and human value is not equal to money, despite the world that we live in. So please just remember that while we go through all this. Yeah. And so that was my buying time for people to get here slides. It looks like it worked. So the panel will essentially go like voice. Number one, we're going to present a big number. Like, oh, here's this big number. Cool. A chart that usually goes up and to the right afterwards to try to visualize and contextualize what's happening. And then go into like a couple of insights and questions. And so this is the questions part, right, where it's just like, well, go over a thing, see if everybody's kind of okay with what's happening there. And then if not, or if so, then we'll go into kind of the weird thing that's going to happen. Everybody cool with that so far? Yeah, cool. In addition to this, all the way at the end, I did an extra thing because Niji Sanji is going to IPO really soon, right? And so I was like, oh, cool, because as one of the things that I just know how to do is digest like S1 reports when companies go like list themselves on the NASDAQ. I was like, oh, is there an S1 report but Japanese? And it's like, oh, okay, there it is. So we'll go over a little bit about that because that just kind of got really interesting for me. And I was like, well, shit, I want to present about that. All the way at the end, we're going to have like limited edition OffKai Expo things for talking about the Niji Sanji IPO and how to understand different parts or the important big number parts of the IPO that will be relevant to determining Niji Sanji's market price. So that'll be fun, hopefully. So yeah. So first thing, on record, we have that there are at least 1.43 billion messages, billion self-expressions sent to VTuber's YouTube live stream since 2018, quarter one. That's fucking crazy, right? Like, people around the world have bothered to type something 1.43 billion times. And the effect of spam bots on this is like minuscule. It's minuscule because the amount of channel IDs and things like that, all of the spam that like from haters and things like that and fake accounts and stuff is a smidgen of 1.43 billion. Could you imagine YouTube allowing 1 billion spam messages to be sent to VTubers? No. So like intuitively, you could be like, okay, maybe toggle the last number by a couple of digits, or not last number to like 42 to compensate for all the spam bots. Otherwise, like it's like, dang, that's pretty cool, right? And again, there's the 1 billion data set from all the data, so you can go look yourself. And so one thing that you can see here is that we have a cumulative count of all live chat messages sent to every YouTube video that has been associated with a VTuber since 2018. And so all the way over here is like Tokinosaurus for actual live stream where you can send a chat. And then all the way skyrocketing over there is today, or not today, but March 31st, 2022, because this is a quarterly chart.
Do you know roughly how many users comprise of the 1.4 billion?
That's a good question. I do. Yeah, so this is the unique, okay, here you go. These are the chart on the left is live chat messages per year, and the chart on the right is unique live chat senders across all VTuber channels per year. And so it turns out, one of the first questions I had was like, okay, cool, that's a lot of messages, right? How many people are actually sending these messages? And so if you do quick like back of the napkin math, 600 million chat messages sent in 2021, 3.5 or 3.2 million people or YouTube channel IDs sending messages in 2021. That's somewhere around 120 messages per channel, which if you divide that by 12, because there's 12 months, that means each channel sends approximately, like the average channel, not the median, of course, right? The average channel will send around 10 live chat messages to VTubers per month for people that watch VTubers. So when you think about it, it's just like, oh, okay, that passes the sniff test of like the average person typing LOL 10 times per month in different VTuber streams, right? So it's like, okay, cool. That seems like a reasonable number. This seems like it's true. And that kind of goes into another really, really scary fact, which is that, okay, there are 3.5 million people, or 3.2 something million people interacting with VTubers. How many other people are there? Like, because you can't get like the concurrent live chat number through the YouTube API. You have to like actually visit it, or you have to be like Playboard and press F5 and just record the number that's on the bottom left, right? And that's pretty scary in terms of like how many people are actually into VTubers, right? Like, this is a room with a capacity of like, what, 40, 30? And it's just like, oh, there are 3.2 billion people? Oh, fuck, right? So that's a pretty fun number. I don't have any particular insight here except for essentially business-wise, your TAM is 3.25 million. Congratulations, right? That's much bigger than a lot of people can, like, from the get-go say. And if some of them are sending super chat, and this is an ad-supported like audience, then there's some economic viability here. Okay. So actually, real quick, any other questions on this before we next slide?
I mean, given 3.25 million people, have you like done some kind of like guess depending based on like number of unique chatters in, let's say, a third video to kind of guess how many unique viewers there might be across multiple?
That will be answered later in the slides. Good question. Good question. Anything else, Robert?
Will these slides be available later through the Discord?
They will. I will cut out the Niji-Sanji IPO ones, but yes, otherwise, yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, you can take pictures of Niji-Sanji IPO. I just don't want to, like, when I record this, like for people that I've asked me already, to like, hey, I can't be in California. I literally live in Singapore. I'm going to record another version of this later and publish it, so like that. Okay, next big number. There are 1.28 million YouTube channel memberships observed. And so when somebody joins a membership, right, it sends a chat message, actually. It sends a little blurb, and it sends a chat message. And whenever somebody says, like they send their 3-month anniversary chat message, I'm a member, make my message green thing, it also sends a chat message that says you are a member. And also, if you just send a chat message, there's like a little stamp that says that you're a member of some particular tier. Turns out it's just all chat messages that you can digest. So of those, a person can have multiple memberships to channels, right? So that's what this figure is. All of the graphs after this, in this particular, until you see the next big number that looks like that, are gonna be not channel memberships, but channel members. So there's gonna be a slight difference between 1.28 million and 1.8 million, right? So these are members observed, no memberships. So the numbers are a little different, but that was a really hard SQL query to make a big query, so I'm not going to do that. So as you can see, and in particular, I want to kind of point this out here, is that a lot of the charts that you're going to see, or that you've seen and will see, are indicative of also just growth in general in the sector. So the trend line here, which is really hard to see, but you can see it kind of like crossing the line here. The trend line here is a polynomial growth curve. So people that don't math or don't want to math, what that means is in day 1, you might see 1 person. Day 2, you might see 3 people. Day 3, you might see like 10 people. And what's happening is the slope of the line is getting steeper and steeper and steeper. And so cumulative members observed, membership growth, like this monthly recurring revenue, right, is growing not exponentially, which would be crazy, but it's growing polynomially. And like, what are the numbers in the world grow polynomially? Like the growth of the human race, right? So it's like, oh shoot, when is that going to stop? So yeah, so that's that. Yeah, and then here's another one of memberships observed year over year. It's essentially the same kind of thing. Like, it's a cumulative graph, but this is just, right, the memberships observed in 2021, because this is a yearly, I couldn't do 2022, is going to be 420,000 memberships. And so if you do some dumb math based on that real quick, you'll find out that like 428,000 memberships or members observed. The minimum-ish, not minimum-ish, but the average low ball for a YouTube membership is about $2, right? So you'll see that across different indie channels. You'll see that across a lot of the smaller Niji Sanji talents. That's only $2. So just in general, it's just like, okay, there's at least 800,000 US dollars worth of memberships flying around. So that's pretty fun. But another thing that's kind of weird here is that that's the unique count of members observed over the year, right? And so one of the things that really weirded me out was when you chop it up to monthly, so this is a graph of just 2021, you would only see people, like, for lack of a better term, demonstrate their membership, only about 200,000, 215,000, right, max over time. And then the chart will basically goes, like, all these things kind of make sense. It's just like, okay, this is summertime, and then people go to school, and then it goes up again after they digest their first year at the new semester, right? And so it's like, okay, these numbers kind of make sense, but why are there only 200,000 of them, right? And so this is an open question that I have. I have no idea. I don't know what they mean. The yearly member count of like 400,000-ish is 2x the monthly member count. What's going on? I don't know. Is it attrition, right? So like you can pause your membership literally every time. If you think about membership in like a very psychopathic term, it's just like pay $5 to get all the members only videos, right? And then just pause your membership. So like what's membership if that's what that is, right? Is it non-participation, right? So like, oh, are there actually more than 200,000 members, but they just don't bother to comment because they're lurkers, right? But they are willing to pay. Yeah, that's what, like, I have no idea. Is the data structurally wrong? LMAO, I have no idea. I don't know. I don't know. It's, the only people that would have answer to the, yeah, yeah. The only people that would know this kind of stuff are the agencies because they would have that number in aggregate across all of their channels, right? So that's some cool private information that I don't feel like giving.
I actually have a question.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier the way this information is collected is a lot of these membership businesses function as chats in the data set. Like if you comment, there's like an icon next to your name, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So what if you got a membership while the stream wasn't running and you just never commented?
You would not be mentioned here. You just not show up in this.
Okay.
Yeah. And so like all these numbers, that's why all these numbers are very fun because I get to say, oh, there's at least this many million. And I'm like, yeah, that's a fun thing to say in a presentation. But yeah, so there's just going to be numbers missing here, but the fun and convenient fact is all the numbers that are missing just make the numbers go up. It's just like, yeah, good data set. So you get to establish minimum viability for different economic things that are related to being a VTuber or running a VTuber agency this way, which is pretty cool. Yep.
Do you have a plot for like the number of members against the price of the membership for the channel?
I don't. That's not something that you can collect except via like somebody going through and doing stuff. So I just didn't because I didn't want to. But I do have some kind of, some sort of related to that on the next slide here is some dumb math. Dumb math is basically back of the napkin stuff, right? So suppose that each member in this chart is at least 2 USD, which is generally probably okay as a baseline number. And then suppose that each member observed holds only one YouTube channel membership. And if that's the case, then like, okay, how many people, how much money is flowing through the veins of VTubers at this point? In 2021, if you use those very dumb math figures, you have $76,000 a month, which is already a living wage. You have $440,000 a month, like monthly, flowing through VTubers. And then if 2022, you have a little bit under $1 million a month at $820,000 a month. So like these are all low balls, right? There's members that are missing. I'm using the cheapest membership. And so it's just like, okay, if this is the most low ball that I could do, which is that there's only one YouTube channel, so you can multiply that by X, there's at least $2, which means there's some linear error, right, that's happening here. because I can't approximate the average or the median because I don't feel like it because it's a lot of work, then there's at least $820,000 of monthly recurring revenue flowing through VTubers, which now you think about the VShojo IPO, or not IPO, but like their venture capital thing, you're like, uh-oh.
Well, that's for a researcher question.
Yeah.
All this data so far is mined from YouTube.
Correct.
Is there Twitch data?
There is Twitch data that I don't collect. So Uechi stuff. So YouTube just happens to be the most like fleshed out thing because there are like SDKs and stuff like that to do it. For Twitch, what they're essentially the issue with Twitch. I'll just cover it real quick. The issue with Twitch is that their anti-bot measures are pretty good. So like you can't just join the RSC channel and sit there. You'll just suddenly not get stuff. It's like, oh, okay, sorry. I guess I'll try something else, or I guess I'll do something else. But I've like over like the last year, I've been trying different things like in my spare time, and none of them have seemed to consistently get data. They just kind of get data and then slowly die. So don't have any of the Twitch stuff. So yeah. So with that number in mind, because I said the magic words for people who are in startups here is monthly recurring revenue, let's do something a little bit weird. Over the course, like in the background of the Crunchyroll Sony acquisition, what you can see every 7 months, because they kind of like justify their price, right, in a certain sense. Every 7 months, they posted how many million users that they had, right? And so this stratified across two different things. They published their paid users, and they published their overall registered users, right? Controlling for spam bots, like subtract 1 million, right? Or abandoned accounts, subtract more. But basically, they publish the figure. I get to compare them against the figure. It's kind of how I'm thinking about it. So every 7 months, they grew 1 million subscribers, or paid users. And every 7 months, they also grew somewhere between 20 to 30 million registered users, right? They won't say whether they're all watching videos or not, but let's not talk about that, Sony. So if we think about that, and in terms of growth, right? Essentially what you get is a 1/5 ratio MMR to ads, right? So the monetization, the conversion rate of a user to pay actual money out of their wallet versus deriving money from an ad is about 20% for Crunchyroll. And the dumb, dangerous thing here is basing a figure on some anecdata that I have personally experienced, was that commenters, right, that you see, and this is related to one of your questions here, make up approximately 60% of the concurrent live viewer count. And this is kind of a dangerous thing to assume, but like when you think about like, oh, does this kind of make sense as a maybe figure to like estimate off of? It kind of does. And then I talk a little bit more about like the error rate here on the different slides, so don't worry about it. And so the extrapolation is that, okay, if there are 3.3 million unique commenters in 2021, right? Does that mean there are 5.5 million live viewers in 2021? Maybe, maybe not, because like the commenters are some subset of the total amount of people that are actually watching. And if there are 826,000 memberships observed in 2021, and so I didn't show that, but it was a different BigQuery query that I run to get the unique memberships observed, then you have about a 3:20 ratio of MMR to ads, so about a 50% conversion rate. So it's about as monetizable as anime, I guess, in a sense. And also you don't have a production committee, you just have a bunch of like introverts that you're monetizing in a sense. So like, kind of, is this easier money than anime? Maybe, I don't know. And so the next slide here is mostly about like, okay, but what if I'm wrong, right? What if this figure of 60% in particular is wrong? And so on the right side, this has two different sets of implications. If 60% is too low, right, that means there are more than 5.5 million viewers. Yay, congratulations. There's a lower conversion ratio, not as nice. And instead, what you get to tell to your investors is that, okay, if that figure is wrong, there's a larger total addressable market. There's larger than 5.5 million people that can be monetized in a sense, right? That can buy your merchandise, that can view ads in exchange for not actually paying necessarily anything. And now, okay, well, what if 60% is too high of a number? Well, you have less viewers, yeah, but you have a larger conversion ratio of like people that will actually pay that $2, that $5, that $10, which indicates, right, that like you are able as a company to extract more money from less people, which is another but different powerful message to send. So I'm not super worried about 60% personally, but also I get to just say that, so because I don't do stuff in this industry. So, so yeah, any questions on this part so far? No? Cool, cool, cool. So I guess the next thing that we'll go into real quick is super chats, right? This is very fun. There are at least 6.87 million super chats sent during live streams since 2018. Kind of makes sense if there's a billion super chats, there's less, or if there's a billion messages sent since 2018, what percentage of them are super chats, right? It's got to be tiny. And so this is how tiny it is, which is essentially a single percent of billions.
Actually, I had a question.
Yeah.
Going to data, not directly related, but has to do with like viewership and stuff. Apparently, YouTube changed something about how viewership is displayed maybe a few months ago. I don't know if you recall this. Do you know what exactly happened to that?
Yeah. So just real quick, the prevailing hypothesis, right? Because like when you talk about like anti-spam and all this kind of stuff, like the thing that no company will admit to you is that they probably sometimes don't even know why it did that. All they know is that a bunch of like deep learning shit happened, and it's just like, that's spam, and you're like, okay, cool. And it's not wrong enough to cause issues. But then this time it was wrong enough to cause issues. So like they had to go look in whatever TensorFlow bullshit pipeline like went wrong, and they had to go cut something over there, and then the number just, right, they A/B tested it, and then it started recovering.
Okay.
So I don't think anybody knows what happened, but it's probably anti-spam. Yep.
I think one of the EGEN girls tweeted about it. I think they said like it was like a glitch or something, but yeah. Yeah,
you just call it a glitch. Sure, whatever, bro. Like that's kind of like when you have like, sorry, that wasn't anything that was just like a glib, like, okay, you're YouTube, yeah, everything's a glitch. Yeah, sorry, I didn't pay anybody. That's a glitch too. Like that's kind of like platforms are just, they get to do that, and nobody can really call them out on it, which is unfortunate. But yeah, no, we don't know, but if we knew the answer, it's not like you'd do anything about it anyway. That's kind of how I think about that. Yeah, so anyway, 6.7 million super chats, simply messages. And so this is the first time I get to use the word simps, so I get to use the word simps here. And so here's a cumulative chart over time of like how the growth of this stuff here. And so one thing that's particularly interesting, I didn't put any trends lines on this. Number one, because there's two lines, but number two, because I wanted to point it out specifically here, is that the super chat growth, right? It started going up in a nice curve here, and then it started just flatlining, right? So like we have reached maximum, like not maximum saturation, but like for every 5, 10 people that are joining, like only like 1 or 2 people, like as that number is going up, this other number is flattening. So like the monetization of people with disposable income, in a sense, is flatlined, right? Like now, you can think of it as the people who are really into it and ready to like super chat like $50, that's not growing at the same rate as the viewership number. And this is particularly important because that is not an intuitive thing to just get, right? Especially if you're a content creator, especially if you're like not somebody that's like data driven and stuff like that. Like you're gonna be like, why are this number's going up? Why isn't this number going up as fast? This is why. We haven't reached like market saturation, but we have reached the people who are really into it and just willing to throw down $100. That's not growing as much. Now you're just harnessing whatever percentage of people of new viewers at this point, right? So there's kind of a bit of inference that you can do here to say that, like, okay, this is linear growth, that's polynomial growth. Something's up with the audience, or the new audience here. And so,
Is it just a limitation of the market?
It probably is. That's what I think.
Because there's way more people with disposable income than even total number of viewers.
Yeah,
so
but like,
there could be more people.
yeah, like, and then you could also see this in the sense of like Crunchyroll's growth, right? For every 20 mil they add, they get 1 of paid users. So it's like, okay, is this just at a certain point, can you just monetize otaku that much, right? And so like maybe not. Glad I don't do this for my job. So next thing here real quick is going to be the percentage of super chats by tier and color per quarter. When I'm going to finish this and then get back to you. Yeah. So one of the things that I displayed here is just real quick, the exact numbers, I guess, of quarter 3, 2021, which is that if you draw an imaginary line across 50%, which is right over here, half of these super chats, a little bit more than half of these super chats are green and below. So that's that's the buying power equivalent of $10 around the world or below. So it's greens, it's light blues, it's blues. And so the rest is going to be the high tier stuff. So when you see the greens, when you see the blues, when you see the light blues, that's just people just throwing odd numbers and tips out. Yeah?
On the last slide, what were the simps again? Like,
Oh, simps are the unique, yeah, sorry. I didn't actually do that, describe that. Simps are the senders of super chats. So like over here, so it's essentially these people, this amount of people are sending these amounts of super chats.
I see.
Or sorry, this isn't on a stacked graph, but like this many super chats is from this many people. And so it's just to attribute that like, okay, people aren't, one person over time isn't sending more and more and more money on a multiplicative level. They're just sending the money that they have because that's like tied to their salary or whatever, right? So that's kind of the takeaway from that. So one thing that's fun with these numbers, right, I'm giving you exact numbers down here, is to concentrate on the red super chats. Just like, all right, how much money is that? And so going to do some dumb math here. So there's what I said earlier about the proportions. Quick and dirty estimates. If there's 34,517 red super chats, just round it up to 35K. And say that it's about $100 actual US dollars each. And this is a rough control for like, okay, if you send a red super chat in like Chile, for example, that's about like 50 bucks, right? For the lowest minimum tier of super chat. But if you send a red super chat, and so, okay, if that's a thing, right? Then can the people sending 500 USD or like the maximum yen one, I forget exactly the number, could that make up for that? Probably, because they have more disposable income in a first world country, right? So it's like, okay, lowballing. We're lowballing at $100 each for sure. So that's $3.5 million sent in quarter 3, 2021. That's about $1 million a month, right? And that's only the red ones. If you go for the green super chats and do the same kind of math with like, oh, could they compensate, blah, 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 that is $1.6 million, which is about like 500 a month, $500,000 a month. And so if you just do the green and reds in that particular time frame, that's $5.1 million in the quarter, which is a lot, right? Kind of a lot. And so I didn't really want to publish this again, but I just want to point you to it. One of the things that I did in 2021 is an article on Medium that went into like, okay, one of the funny things about like the first generations of Niju Sanji En is that they were called En, but they definitely spoke other languages. So like, okay, well, how many, like Raymu in particular, right? Just like, I was like, okay, there's a lot of Spanish people in this chat. How many Spanish people are there? And then I sliced and diced like, okay, if these are if I'm seeing the Mexican dollar, right? Does she have all the Mexican dollars? Does do they and Wachter share the Mexican dollar? And so this report, this Data Studio report just kind of goes into like the fact that, the conclusion that Niji Sanji En absolutely cornered every single, like basically the rest of the world that wasn't English speaking or Japanese speaking or Chinese speaking. They, like over all the VTubers, even Wachter even, Niji Sanji En figured out that like, oh, okay, this is how much the rest of the world is worth, which was crazy powerful. Obviously, the outlier to that is like Kiara because she's Australian, but
Isn't she Austrian?
yeah, no, so for content, yeah, the joke is that she says she's Australian, and it's just like, girl, you speak German, stop. So yeah, so this report kind of goes into like a little bit more detail. It shows some big queries about how I actually got it, but please reference that if you have any questions.